Tilea's Troubles, Part 34, Fleshmeat. Spring 2402, the Via Nano, south of the Tetto Verde forest, eastern Tilea. His goblins emerged from the trees, scuttling over the rocks in their usual higgledy-piggledy manner. Habdock did not bother to count them, as he could see there was still plenty enough left for his purposes, which was all that mattered to him. Most men who saw his servants laughed. One captain in the Princes described them as funny little things. Knowing them, their nastiness, their unpleasant stench, even to an ogre's resilient nose, their foul ways, and it takes considerable talent to appear foul to an ogre, Habdock could not see what the man had meant. Annoying, yes. Too small and skinny for both their arms and armour, yes. Funny, no, not in the slightest. As they clattered to a halt, Habdock squinted, flicking his eyes from one to another in search of any particular he could expect to get some sense from. The closest to him was so out of breath he looked as if he could not speak if he tried. All his own fault, of course, for he wore a triple-layered helm tilting to one side and an ill-fitting iron breastplate, all made heavier by several dangling lengths of chain with no apparent purpose. His cheeks were puffed, and he all but dragged a battered and most likely blunted iron axe with both hands, his back and legs bent from the strain. There was a clutch of 4 goblins off to one side, even more misshapen and bent than the puffing one. They simply stared at Habdock as if they were expecting him to speak. Habdock could feel the usual surge of furious impatience already building, his head throbbing beneath his skull plate, as he marvelled yet again at their stupidity. They were here to report to him, and yet they seemed to expect him to report to them. Still they stared. Just as he was tempted to stick the razor-sharp tip of his hunting bolt through the panting pie-hole of the foremost goblin, he caught sight of a little runt with ridiculously overlarge horns adorning his noddle pot, and not a single tooth to line his raggedy maw. That one he did recognise. He remembered that one had proved capable of something approaching intelligence in the past. Horny was the name Habdock had given him before. Of course, he had no idea at all what the goblin called himself, and he certainly did not care. Habdock pointed a crooked finger at the goblin. Horny took the cue, and himself pointed towards the forest canopy.
"Mighty Hunter, Lord of Gristle and Bone, we've been over there and all around and back again,"
he said.
"Very nice," snarled Habdock. "Stretching your legs and having a breath of fresh air."
Horny grinned to reveal swollen, bloody red guns.
"And looking, of course, a lot of looking."
"So here's a thought for you," said Habdock. "Why not tell me what you saw before I get so angry you'll never have a chance to tell anything again? Did you see the forest people or not?"
Almost imperceptibly, the goblin's grin changed to a rather more fixed affair. Habdock failed entirely to notice any difference, having never been of a mind to consider such subtleties in runts like this.
"No peeps, nothing,"
said Horny.
"If there's there, then they're slippery and sneaky, leaving not so much as a bent leaf or a toe print behind them."
Habdock pondered this. If there was no one there, then why had Mangler ordered the army to go the long way around? Mangler had clearly planned at first to march right through the forest, but then he had changed his mind, never explaining why. Most of the lads seemed to think it was because what little they might find in the forest would not make up for the effort of finding it, what with branches, roots and thorny things for ever getting in the way. One or two had suggested, never within earshot of Mangler or any of his lieutenants of course, that Mangler was afraid of the trees and what they contained, conjuring thoughts of bark-skinned monstrous demons and invisible foes planting arrows into your eyes, just like in the old stories of the forest. Habdock had given this latter suggestion little credence. Yet still he wondered why they couldn't penetrate the forest just a little, if only to find some bigger cuts of flesh meat for the supper pots, like deer or goats, or maybe even some sweet elven flesh. And as the trees at the edge were not too densely packed, surely it would save time at least to take some forest path shortcuts, rather than continue this lengthy circumnavigation. Then again, he admitted, there could be good reasons for their choice of route, including the likely possibility that Mangler intended to enjoy some good looting from Tilean settlements off to the side as they made their way. Having a destination in mind was one thing, but there were usually plenty of opportunities that warranted taking one's time getting there. None of the lads were complaining about taking the easy route, the routeless route, the flat ease of the old road instead of the tangled briars of the ancient forest. It was just a pity that the wild animals Habdock would dearly love to hunt, and then gorge upon with relish, were so unlikely to favour the same route. Nor were the delicately flavoured sylvan folk the sort to traverse such an open road. He had only once tasted their flesh, and that salted and aged, but he had heard more than one report that when fresh it was delicious beyond compare. While Habdock the hunter did his pondering, two of the goblins were sharing their own thoughts.
"He'll have us running back in any moment,"
said Frockit Anglegrinch, both hands clutching the shaft of his bill-hook as if he might fall without it.
"Look at 'em,"
he said, indicating the ogres streaming past behind Habdock.
"Every one of them gets to walk. I'd go so far as to say amble, while we has to scamper never-ending hither and thither through a tangle of thorny spikes."
His companion, Pushin Cochwallop, twisted his frowning mouth to even lower depths, his chin thrusting more prominently between his sagging lips. If one took into account his protruding eyes and his boiled potato nose, neatly framed by his chainmail hood, the sum of the parts made a very ugly whole. Mind you, Frockit was no looker either. Pushin peered beyond the ogre hunter at the marching column on the road.
"Some ain't even doing that, Frockit,"
he said, watching the huge grey beast carrying the scrap launcher and its numerous goblin crew.
"Look at them lucky sods, sitting all comfy like, as their beast does all the work beneath their idle arses."
"I hopes they get splinters in the backsides,"
Frockit spat through his teeth.
"and all the jolting gives their joints the jip."
At last Habdock had come to a decision. Clearing his throat loudly enough to make the beast of burden behind him grunt, he gave his orders.
"Right, you're all going back in, and this time you'll look properly, or I'll have your eyes in a bowl for a tasty treat while supper roasts. Everyone knows what lives in these woods. If you can't find them, then you're not looking hard enough. Do something naughty to get their attention. Now, I know you're good at running away. See if you can't get them to chase you. And if you can't net them yourselves, bring 'em my way, and I'll stick a stick through 'em."
Behind him, the column continued its journey. Mangler the merciless as mercenaries, flags a-fluttering overhead, while their iron-shod boots ground the old road to dust.